Imagine standing at the edge of an abyss, not a physical one, a mental one. You look down into the void and realize there is no ground beneath your feet, no foundation, no structure holding reality together. Everything you believed was solid melts away. Morality, an illusion, truth, a fantasy, meaning, a comforting lie we tell ourselves in the dark. This is nihilism, and it comes in many forms. Each one dismantles a different pillar of human existence. Each one asks a question most people spend their lives avoiding. Each one forces us to confront what happens when we strip away the stories we tell ourselves about reality. The word itself comes from the Latin nihil, nothing. But nihilism is not simply about nothing. It's about what remains when everything else is taken away. It's about the courage or terror of looking directly at existence, without the filters of religion, tradition, or hope. And there are more versions of this philosophical stance than most people realize. Understanding them is not just an academic exercise. It's a map of how human beings have grappled with the most terrifying questions ever posed. Questions about whether anything matters, whether anything is real, whether we can know anything at all. Let's descend into the abyss, one type at a time. Existential nihilism, the void of meaning. This is the most famous form, the one that haunts modern consciousness. Existential nihilism makes a simple claim. Life has no intrinsic meaning, purpose, or value. You were not put here for a reason. There is no grand design, no cosmic plan, no destiny waiting to unfold. You are a biological accident in an indifferent universe that does not care whether you exist or not. Every goal you pursue, every dream you chase, every moment you spend searching for purpose is fundamentally futile, because there is nothing to find. The universe is not organized around human values. It does not recognize achievement, love, or sacrifice as meaningful categories. These are constructs we invented to make existence bearable. Think about this for a moment. You wake up every day and act as if your life has direction, as if the things you do matter beyond the immediate moment, as if building a career, raising a family, or contributing to society means something in the larger scheme of things. But the universe is 13.8 billion years old. It will exist for trillions more. Your entire life is a microscopic blip in cosmic time, less than a blink, and when you die, the universe continues without pause. No record is kept. No meaning is preserved. The atoms that made up your body will scatter and recombine into other forms. In 100 years, most people who knew you will also be gone. In 1,000, your name will be forgotten. In 1,000,000, humanity itself may be extinct. So what does any of it mean? Existential nihilism says nothing. This idea terrified Friedrich Nietzsche, though he is often mistakenly labeled a nihilist himself. He saw nihilism not as a solution but as a crisis. The death of God, as he called it, was not a celebration. It was a catastrophe. For centuries, religion provided meaning. It told people why they existed, what they should do, and where they were going after death. Remove that structure and you're left with a void. Nietzsche warned that Western civilization was heading into this void unprepared. And he was right. The 20th century saw existential nihilism manifest in art, literature, and philosophy. Albert Camus wrote about the absurd, the conflict between humans seeking meaning and a universe that offers none. Jean-Paul Sartre explored radical freedom, the idea that without inherent purpose, we are condemned to be free. But here's the twist. Existential nihilism doesn't necessarily lead to despair. Some thinkers argue it's liberating. If nothing matters, then you are free to create your own meaning. You are not bound by a predetermined purpose. You can define yourself however you choose. Others say this is wishful thinking. Self-created meaning is still arbitrary. It's still ultimately meaningless because it's not grounded in anything beyond your own invention. The debate continues, but the core claim remains unchanged. The universe does not care about you, and nothing you do has inherent significance. Moral nihilism, the collapse of right and wrong. If existential nihilism removes meaning from life, moral nihilism removes meaning from morality. It claims that moral statements are never true in an objective sense. There is no such thing as good or evil in the fabric of reality. There is no moral law written into the universe, no cosmic judge determining right from wrong. Murder is not inherently wrong. Kindness is not inherently good. These are human preferences, social constructs, evolutionary adaptations that helped our ancestors survive. But they are not truths. This idea is more disturbing than existential nihilism for most people. We can accept that life has no cosmic purpose. We can even embrace it. But the idea that morality itself is meaningless strikes at something deeper. Because morality is what allows society to function. It's the basis for laws, justice, and cooperation. If morality is an illusion, then what prevents chaos? Nothing, says the moral nihilist. There are different flavors of this position. Error theory, proposed by J.L. Mackie, argues that all moral statements are false because they presuppose something that doesn't exist. Objective moral values. When you say murder is wrong, you're making a claim about moral facts that simply aren't there. Expressivism takes a different approach. It says moral statements don't express facts at all. They express emotions. When you say murder is wrong, you're really saying I disapprove of murder or boo murder. It's not a truth claim. It's an expression of feeling. The implications are profound. If morality is not objective, then every atrocity in history was not wrong in any ultimate sense. The Holocaust, slavery, genocide, these were human preferences in conflict. One group decided to impose their will on another, but there was no violation of cosmic law. This doesn't mean moral nihilists endorse atrocities. Most don't. They may still follow moral codes for practical reasons. Social cohesion, personal preference, empathy. But they recognize these codes as constructed, not discovered. Historically, moral nihilism has been associated with dangerous movements. The Russian nihilists of the 19th century rejected all traditional morality and authority. Some turned to political violence and terrorism, believing that nothing was sacred and everything could be destroyed to make way for a new order. Dostoevsky explored this in his novels. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov famously declares, "If God does not exist, everything is permitted. But is that true? Do we need objective morality to behave ethically?" Secular ethics attempts to answer this. It argues that morality can be grounded in human well-being, reason, or social contracts, without requiring cosmic validation. But moral nihilists remain unconvinced. They see these attempts as camouflage. We're still acting as if morality matters, when it fundamentally doesn't. The question becomes practical rather than philosophical. Can civilization survive without the belief in objective morality? History suggests we need shared ethical frameworks to function. Whether those frameworks are true may be irrelevant if they're effective. But the nihilist whispers, what you call effective is just another preference, another arbitrary choice in a meaningless universe. Epistemological nihilism, the impossibility of knowledge. Now we go deeper. Epistemological nihilism attacks something even more fundamental than meaning or morality. It attacks knowledge itself. This position claims that knowledge is impossible. We cannot know anything with certainty. All beliefs are unjustified. Truth is beyond reach. This is not simple skepticism. Skeptics doubt specific claims but usually accept that knowledge is possible in principle. Epistemological nihilists go further. They argue that the very concept of knowledge is incoherent. Why? Because knowledge requires justification. You can't just believe something randomly and call it knowledge. You need reasons, evidence, arguments. But where do those reasons come from? They require further justification, which requires even more justification, and so on, infinitely. This is called the regress problem. Every justification rests on prior justifications. You can never reach bedrock. There is no foundation where the chain of reasoning stops and says, this is certain. Some philosophers try to escape this through foundationalism. They claim there are basic beliefs that don't need justification, self-evident truths, direct experiences. But epistemological nihilists reject this. Every supposedly basic belief can be questioned. Even the statement I exist relies on assumptions about what I means, what exist means, and whether our reasoning about these concepts is reliable. Descartes tried to establish certainty with I think, therefore I am. But even this has been challenged. Does thinking prove existence, or does existence enable thinking? How do we know our reasoning about any of this is valid? You might say, but I'm experiencing reality right now. That's undeniable. The epistemological nihilist responds, how do you know your experience is reliable? How do you know you're not dreaming, hallucinating, a brain in a vat being fed simulated experiences? You can't step outside your own mind to verify that your mind is accurately representing reality. You're trapped inside the very system you're trying to validate. This creates a closed loop of circular reasoning. And if you can't even be certain about basic facts of existence, how can you know anything more complex? Scientific theories, historical events, mathematical truths, all of it becomes questionable. The practical consequences are paralyzing. If we truly accepted epistemological nihilism, we couldn't function. We rely on knowledge to navigate the world, to make decisions, to communicate. But that's the point, says the epistemological nihilist. We pretend to have knowledge because it's useful. But usefulness is not truth. Science works. Technology functions. But does that prove our theories are true? Or just that they're pragmatically effective within certain contexts? The history of science shows that theories we once considered absolutely true were later overturned. Newtonian physics seemed certain until Einstein. Euclidean geometry seemed absolute until non-Euclidean alternatives emerged. If our best knowledge is always provisional, always subject to revision, can we ever claim to truly know anything? This form of nihilism is perhaps the most philosophically rigorous and the most maddening. It uses the tools of reason to undermine reason itself, and there may be no escape. Political nihilism, the rejection of all systems, move from the abstract to the concrete, from epistemology to governance. Political nihilism rejects all political structures, institutions, and systems as fundamentally illegitimate. There is no just government, no valid authority, no political ideology that deserves support. All forms of rule are arbitrary impositions of power. They serve the interests of those in control, not any higher principle of justice or order. This is different from anarchism, though they overlap. Anarchists reject the state but often propose alternative forms of organization based on voluntary cooperation and mutual aid. Political nihilists are more radical. They reject not just specific systems but the very idea that political organization can be legitimate. The Russian nihilists of the 1860s embodied this position. They saw all existing institutions, government, church, family, tradition, as corrupt and oppressive. They called for the destruction of everything without necessarily offering a replacement. Sergei Nechayev wrote the Catechism of a Revolutionary, which declared that the revolutionary has no interests, no feelings, no attachments. Everything is justified in the pursuit of total destruction. This was nihilism as praxis, as action, and it was terrifying. Because if no political system is legitimate, then violence against any system becomes permissible. Revolution is not about building something better. It's about tearing down what exists. The consequences of political nihilism can be seen throughout history. When people lose faith in institutions, when they believe all systems are equally corrupt, they become susceptible to demagogues who promise to burn it all down. The Weimar Republic collapsed in part because citizens stopped believing in democratic institutions. They saw all political parties as self-serving, all promises as lies. This cynicism created space for extremism. Today, political nihilism manifests in different forms. Voter apathy, conspiracy theories that claim all leaders are corrupt, accelerationism, which argues that systems must collapse completely before anything better can emerge. The digital age amplifies this. Social media erodes trust in institutions. Leaked documents expose hypocrisies. Scandals become entertainment. The gap between stated ideals and actual behavior becomes impossible to ignore, and people stop believing, not in this policy or that party, in the entire concept of political legitimacy. But here's the paradox. Political nihilism rarely stays theoretical. Those who reject all systems still live within them, still benefit from the order they provide, even while denouncing it. And when political nihilism does lead to action, the results are rarely liberating. Destruction is easy. construction is hard. Revolutions that begin by rejecting all systems often end by creating brutal new ones. The question becomes, is political cynicism a clear-eyed recognition of how power works, or a self-fulfilling prophecy that makes good governance impossible? If everyone believes all politicians are corrupt, does that make corruption inevitable? Political nihilism may be diagnosis or disease, perhaps both. Cosmic nihilism, the indifference of the universe. Zoom out further. Beyond human concerns, beyond Earth, beyond our solar system. Cosmic nihilism, sometimes called metaphysical nihilism, makes a claim about reality itself. The universe is not designed. It has no purpose, no guiding intelligence, no underlying reason for existing rather than not existing. It's sometimes phrased as, why is there something rather than nothing? The cosmic nihilist responds, there is no reason. Existence is a brute fact. It just is. This goes beyond existential nihilism, which focuses on human meaning. Cosmic nihilism addresses the absence of meaning in reality itself. Consider the scale. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars. Most stars have planets. The numbers are incomprehensible, and in all of this vastness, there is no evidence of purpose. Galaxies form, evolve, and die through purely mechanical processes. Stars are nuclear furnaces burning through fuel. Planets are rocks and gas accreting through gravity. There's no plot, no narrative arc, no climax building toward some cosmic resolution. Just matter and energy following physical laws through space and time. The philosopher Thomas Nagel explored this in his work on the absurd. He described the feeling of viewing your own life from an objective, cosmic perspective. From that vantage point, all human concerns seem ridiculous. Your career anxieties, your relationship dramas, your fear of death, they matter to you intensely in the moment. But from the universe's perspective, they don't matter at all, because the universe has no perspective. It doesn't evaluate or judge, it simply is. Modern cosmology reinforces cosmic nihilism. We know the universe will eventually die, either through heat death, where entropy reaches maximum and all organized structures dissolve, or through a big crunch, where gravity pulls everything back into a singularity. Either way, all traces of everything that ever existed will be erased. Every human achievement, every work of art, every moment of love or suffering, gone, and the universe won't notice. Some find this liberating. If nothing ultimately matters, then failure doesn't matter either. You can't mess up your life in any permanent cosmic sense, because there is no cosmic sense. Others find it crushing. It makes all efforts seem futile. Why build anything if it will all be destroyed? Why care about anything if care itself is meaningless? The response to cosmic nihilism often determines how people live. Some embrace hedonism, pursue pleasure because nothing else matters. Some embrace stoicism, accept the meaninglessness and focus on what you can control. Some create their own meaning, even while acknowledging it's arbitrary. But cosmic nihilism itself makes no recommendations. It's purely descriptive. It says, this is how reality is. What you do with that information is up to you, and the universe doesn't care either way. Mereological nihilism, the illusion of objects. Here's where nihilism becomes truly strange. Mereological nihilism is an obscure philosophical position that nevertheless strikes at the heart of everyday experience. It claims that composite objects do not exist. Only fundamental particles are real. Everything else is conceptual fiction. There is no such thing as a table. There are particles arranged table-wise. But the table itself, as a distinct entity separate from its parts, is not real. There are no humans. Only particles arranged human-wise. No cities, no planets, no stars. Just particles and the void. This sounds absurd. You're reading these words right now. Clearly you exist. Clearly screens and eyes and brains exist. But mereological nihilists argue that these are useful fictions. When we talk about objects, we're engaging in shorthand. We're grouping particles together conceptually because it helps us navigate reality. But conceptual grouping doesn't create new entities. It's just a cognitive tool. Think about a cloud. Where does one cloud end and another begin? The boundaries are vague, arbitrary, conventional. Or consider your body. Cells die and are replaced constantly. After 7 years, almost every atom in your body has been swapped out. Are you still the same person? Same object? If objects were truly real, these questions would have clear answers, but they don't. Mereological nihilism solves this by denying that composite objects exist in the first place. There are just fundamental particles in various arrangements. When the arrangement changes, nothing is actually lost or gained at the object level because there were no objects to begin with. This has implications for personal identity. If you're not a distinct entity but just particles arranged U-wise, then what dies when you die? The particles continue, only the arrangement changes. Does this mean death is an illusion? Not exactly. The arrangement that constituted your consciousness ceases, and from a subjective perspective, that's everything. But objectively, nothing was lost except a pattern. Most philosophers reject mereological nihilism as overly radical. It contradicts our most basic intuitions about reality. We directly experience ourselves as objects, as unified entities. But intuition is not proof, and the history of philosophy shows that many intuitions turned out to be wrong. The question remains, are we discovering objects in the world or inventing them? Mereological nihilism says we're inventing them, and that the invention is so deep and automatic that we mistake it for perception. This form of nihilism doesn't make practical difference to daily life. You'll still avoid walking into walls, whether you believe walls are real or just particles arranged wall-wise. But it challenges something fundamental about how we understand existence itself. And once you see it, you can't entirely unsee it. The consequences, what happens when nihilism spreads. These are not just abstract philosophical positions. They have consequences. When people truly internalize nihilism, any form of it, their behavior changes, society changes. History provides examples. The Russian nihilists of the 19th century didn't just theorize, they acted. They assassinated political leaders. They rejected all social norms. They lived as if nothing was sacred. The result was chaos and violent backlash. The Russian state cracked down brutally. The nihilist movement largely destroyed itself through internal conflicts and external suppression. In art and literature, nihilism manifests as a deep cultural exhaustion. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw a turn toward pessimism and decadence. Artists like Edvard Munch captured existential dread in works like The Scream. Writers like Franz Kafka depicted worlds of meaningless bureaucracy and suffering. These weren't endorsements of nihilism. They were responses to it, attempts to capture the feeling of living in a world where traditional certainties had collapsed. The 20th century's great totalitarian movements can partly be understood as reactions to nihilism. When people lose faith in traditional values and institutions, they often grasp for new absolutes, new certainties, even if those certainties are brutal and irrational. Fascism and communism both offered total answers, complete systems, grand narratives that gave meaning to individual suffering. They were, in some sense, attempts to fill the void left by nihilism, and they caused immense destruction in the process. But nihilism also has less dramatic consequences. In individuals, it can manifest as depression, apathy, or cynicism. If nothing matters, why bother? If all moral claims are false, why not be selfish? If knowledge is impossible, why study or learn? These attitudes, spread across a population, erode social cohesion. They make collective action difficult. They undermine trust. Yet some argue nihilism can be productive. That confronting meaninglessness is necessary for intellectual honesty. That accepting the absence of cosmic purpose forces us to take responsibility for creating our own values. Camus argued for rebellion against the absurd, not through suicide or escape, but through living fully despite meaninglessness. Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, can still be happy if he accepts his fate and finds freedom within it. Nietzsche called for the creation of new values after the old ones collapsed. The Übermensch who transcends nihilism by affirming life, even in its meaninglessness. These responses attempt to transform nihilism from a dead end into a starting point. But they require enormous psychological strength. Most people cannot sustain that level of existential courage, and so they compromise. They live as if things matter while privately doubting. They follow moral rules while questioning their foundation. They pursue knowledge while acknowledging its limitations. This is perhaps the most common response to nihilism: pragmatic acceptance, a kind of functional belief that allows daily life to continue. But underneath, the doubt remains. The void is always there, waiting to be glimpsed. The modern condition: living with nihilism. We live in an age of unprecedented nihilistic awareness. Information technology has made it impossible to maintain comfortable illusions. We see too much. We know too much. The gaps between our stated beliefs and our actual behavior are constantly exposed. Political cynicism is widespread. Trust in institutions has collapsed across democracies. Voter turnout declines. Conspiracy theories proliferate. People assume all sides are corrupt. All statements are propaganda. All systems are rigged. This is political nihilism in action. Meanwhile, existential nihilism seeps into popular culture. Memes about meaninglessness circulate online. Dark humor about futility becomes a coping mechanism. Younger generations openly discuss their sense that nothing matters and everything is futile. Is this healthy confrontation with reality, or a cultural disease spreading through digital networks? Perhaps both. The tools that expose inconsistency and hypocrisy also provide connection and meaning. Online communities form around shared interests. Digital spaces allow people to find purpose, even while acknowledging its arbitrariness. We've become sophisticated about meaning-making. We know we're constructing it, and we do it anyway. This is the paradox of modern life. We are simultaneously more nihilistic and more creative about generating meaning than any previous generation. But this balancing act is unstable. It requires constant effort, constant negotiation between awareness and commitment. And the question remains, can this continue indefinitely? Or does widespread nihilistic awareness eventually undermine the possibility of shared meaning? Some philosophers argue we're entering a post-nihilistic age, that we've absorbed nihilism and moved beyond it, that we can create robust forms of meaning without requiring cosmic validation. Others say we're just beginning the descent, that the full implications of nihilism haven't yet been felt, that future generations will live in ways we can't imagine, shaped by a thoroughgoing acceptance of meaninglessness. The outcome is uncertain, but the choice facing individuals is clear. How do you live in a world where nihilism is always an option, where the void can be glimpsed at any moment? You can turn away, embrace traditional beliefs, religious faith, cultural certainties, convince yourself that meaning is real and objective. You can embrace nihilism fully, accept meaninglessness and live accordingly, though what living accordingly means is unclear. Or you can live in the tension, acknowledge meaninglessness while acting as if things matter, create your own values while knowing they're constructed, pursue truth while accepting knowledge is limited. This third path is difficult. It requires holding contradictions, living with ambiguity, but it may be the only honest response to the human condition in the 21st century. The abyss stares back. We began at the edge of an abyss. Now we've descended into it, explored its depths, mapped its contours. Existential nihilism tells us life has no meaning. Moral nihilism says right and wrong are illusions. Epistemological nihilism claims knowledge is impossible. Political nihilism rejects all systems and authority. Cosmic nihilism reveals an indifferent universe. Mereological nihilism dissolves objects into particles. Each one strips away a layer of certainty. Each one challenges something we take for granted. Together they paint a picture of existence that is cold, purposeless, and fundamentally alien to human hopes. But here's the strange thing. Knowing all this doesn't make life unlivable. Billions of people live meaningful, ethical, purposeful lives without cosmic validation. They love, create, suffer, and die, and their lives matter to them. Perhaps that's enough. Perhaps the search for objective meaning was always a mistake, a category error, like asking what color mathematics is. Meaning might be something we do, not something we discover. Morality might be something we build, not something written in the stars. Knowledge might be provisional and contextual, but still useful and reliable enough. And if that's true, then nihilism isn't the end of the story. It's a clearing away, a necessary destruction that makes space for something new, or perhaps that's just another comforting story we tell ourselves in the dark. The void doesn't answer. It never has, but we keep asking questions anyway. So here's the question that remains. If you truly believe that nothing matters, that morality is an illusion, that knowledge is impossible, and that the universe is utterly indifferent to your existence, could you still get out of bed in the morning? And if you can, what does that say about nihilism? What does it say about you?